Hi everyone, we are back for chapter 5. Chapter 5 is a little bit different than the last one we worked on. I'm going to give the entire chapter 5 lesson here in this one video and the assigned questions. And again, just like you did last week, you're going to work through each section at your own speed and submit the questions at the end of the week for evaluation. Okay, again, if there's any questions or anything like that, make sure you get in contact with me and message me. Okay, so 5.1, data concepts and graphical summaries. This first one is a real bad example, so we're gonna just skip through that. This unit is basically to give you all of the terminology you require to do your own survey. Next week, you're gonna have your own survey assignment, so this is kind of the foundation leading up to it. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at some of the main types of data that you can use in a survey. They have names, they have categories and things like that, so you can identify them more easily. I'm gonna ask in your survey that you use each of these, okay? So we'll talk more about that later. So numerical data, numerical is known as quantitative. Quantity is numbers. You might know this from your science classes as well. So it's data in the form of any number. The data can be continuous or discrete. We talked about these two before. Continuous meaning it can have any range of values. Discrete means it has to have only a specific value, like the roll of a dice, like the numbers from 1 to 10, whereas the continuous was like height and weight and things like that, where you can have infinite decimal places to represent the number. So it kind of has a range. The other type, and this is new, is categorical data. This is known as qualitative or quality, from the root word quality data. Can be sorted into several groups or categories, and these are the two. Okay, so we can have categorical categories that are in order, ordinal data. So this is data that can be ranked. For instance, poor, fair, good, very good. That has a ranking system. Okay, so that's in order. But those are in categories. Those aren't numbers. And then nominal data is data that cannot be ranked. An example of this would be like eye color. Eye color, you can ask on a survey, what are the color of your eyes? That can't be ranked. You just are identifying what color your eyes are, and then you would graph it and so on and so forth. So a few examples, so each type. So this first type is video game duration in minutes. Well, this is continuous because time can't be identified exactly. It might be, I played video games for 21.328 minutes. So it's numerical, but it's continuous. It can have a range of values, and that's how we identify it, with the attaching bars together. The second example is number of chairs in a room. Well, that is discrete. Number of chairs. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or however many there are. It is also numerical. So those are individual, and you can see in the graph there's spacing because it's not pushed all together. Okay, another type, this one is rating: frequency, poor, satisfactory, good, excellent, and this is the frequency. So this is, you can order them. Poor would be the worst, excellent would be the best. So these are categories. This is ordinal and categorical. And then the last one, it's the down here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's municipality, where you live. So we have Peel region, York region, Ottawa region, and the population, okay? So that is categorical. Those are in categories, but it's nominal. They're not ranked. One is not better than the other per se. Okay, so a few questions here. Page 204, 1, 3, and 4 for that first section. Okay, this one you can read through it. I'm going to just skim through it. It's principles of data collection. So in your survey, when you do it, you're going to be looking at a population. So obviously when conducting a survey, it's not feasible, it's not possible to gather information from everybody. So what you do is you conduct a sample of a smaller group. Okay, so for instance, if we wanted to survey a population, let's say the Bolton or Caledon community, you couldn't go door to door and get everybody. It's not really possible. So you would get a sample. So a sample is the subset of the population. Okay, so the sample in the group is, the sample is the group of individuals that participate in the actual survey. Ideally, the sample represents the population. So you wouldn't just get the grade 12s from Caledon or Bolton. You have to get adults, kids, you have to get a representation. Okay, so when you do your survey, you're going to identify the population, the overall group that you'd like to look at, and then you would determine how you're going to create your sample. Okay, so these are sampling techniques. Simple random is every member of the population has equal chance of being selected. Systematic is you go through the population sequentially in sequence and select members at regular intervals. So the example, every 10th person is sampled. That's systematic as a system. Stratified is when the population contains groups of members who share a common characteristic, such as their age. So some people might want to sample, do a survey on grade 12s alone. Okay, so this is the stratum. And then a stratified sample would get the same proportion. So the example is if there's 70 female teachers and 30 males in our school, let's say, if you did a 10 teacher sample, it'd have to be 7 and 3. It has to have the same proportions. So that's stratified. A cluster is when you randomly select a group or a cluster of people to be surveyed, and then everybody is surveyed. So if you went to McDonald's in the GTA and randomly select a few McDonald's in the area and survey every customer there. So that's a cluster. Multi-stage, so you use several levels of random sampling. So if you wanted to do the population, let's say, was everybody in Ontario. So what the researcher would do is randomly select cities, randomly select subdivisions, and then randomly select houses within that subdivision. So it's a multi-stage. Voluntary is you invite the members of the population to participate in the survey. Typically, this does not represent the population. So it could be conducted over a radio or a mail-in or on a Facebook page or something. It's voluntary. So kind of typically only the people that really care or have the time to do it will do it. And convenience is you just select the sample because it's easy to access. So if you wanted to do all the grade 12s, you would I would survey the class because you're right in front of me. You're there well, you're not there anymore, but you would be there every day. That's just convenient for me. Okay. So read through the examples on page 208 and 209, A to G. They give you more examples and you can try to identify it yourself. And then those 5 questions, 210, 1, 2, 4, 7, and 8. Nothing too difficult. Again, just an introduction to some of the concepts. Okay, 5.3 is collecting data. This is going to go really quick. Primary source is data you collect yourself, and then you summarize it in a graph, a chart, a table, whatever. Secondary is, let's say I wanted to find out COVID numbers. Well, I can't go around and conduct the survey myself. I'm going to get it from Stats Canada or Health Canada. That's a secondary source. Okay? And then there's 2 types of studies, an observational where you look at situations that are already occurring and try to make inferences, educated guesses. So for an example, a researcher might compare 2 groups of people, one that exercise regularly and one that do not, to see if they're healthier or not. Okay, so you're observing what is already occurring. An experimental is you manipulate, you control the scenario. So I might randomly choose 2 similar groups, and one group performs rigorous or strenuous exercise for 30 days while the other continues with their normal lifestyle. Then at the end, I'd measure the fitness of both groups. Okay, so I'm actually doing an experiment to see what would happen. Okay, page 219, 1 to 3. And the last one is biases. Biases in surveys. This is 5.5. 5.4, there's no information. So when somebody's conducting a survey, they don't want biases. They want to get the information that is pure and the most true. Okay, so we want to avoid these 4 types. Okay, so there's a response bias when somebody deliberately gives false information. Okay, so if I were to ask the class who cheated last week, nobody would raise their hand. That's a response bias. If I were to do a survey on drugs or alcohol consumption or vaping, people might not give the right answer for fear of getting in trouble or for whatever reason. Okay, so you have to make sure that it would be anonymous or that whatever the situation is to eliminate that bias. Sampling bias is when when your sample doesn't represent the population. So next week we want to make sure you guys don't do this. So if you surveyed students at a football game and asked whether the school should spend extracurriculars on new instruments for the band or equipment for the football team. Well, everybody's there for the football team, so that's the wrong sample. You'd have to take an anonymous school sample to get the correct answer to your question, or the most honest answer. Non-response is when the opinions significantly are different than those that do not respond. So the example of this is a mail-in survey asked respondents about their drinking habits. Only 3% of surveys were returned. Such a small rate of return wouldn't yield a representative sample. So because people don't answer, you're not going to get the correct or the accurate information. And measurement bias is when the data isn't being implemented properly. So you'll get either a bigger number than should be or a smaller one. For an example, if you're driving on the highway and you drive by a cop car, you're going to slow down. So that's not going to get an accurate speed of what people actually do. Instead, you would just go on top of the bridge and measure their speed, and you would get an accurate reading of people's actual speed. Okay? Leading questions are questions that are influencing the response. Okay? So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure your questions are neutral, and you'll want to do that in your survey. And there's some examples in the textbook as well. Okay, so read over example 2 on page 35. That gives more examples of these biases. And then page 240, 1, 2, and 4. Okay, that's it for this week. Go at your own pace, submit it at the end, and good luck. And we'll talk to you soon.